Hello, and welcome to Glory Be. Interesting people and how they pray.
Each week, we chat with interesting people about their lives, their work, and how they pray. I'm Sharon Hannish.
And I'm Mike Malcolm. Our guest this week is Father Michael Pratt. Father Pratt is a native of Stillwater, Oklahoma. He attended Oklahoma State University, and halfway through his college experience, he began discerning a call to the priesthood and found himself at the Seminary of St. Vianney in Minnesota, cold Minnesota. While attending that seminary, he continued his post-secondary education then at the University of St. Thomas and St. Paul, again Minnesota, where he obtained a degree in philosophy. After graduation, Father Pratt went to Rome to continue his priestly studies for the next 5 years. That's a lot of time in school. Then he earned a bachelor's degree in theology from the Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas and a licentiate degree in theology from the John Paul II Institute for Marriage and Family Life. So you're a very well-educated guy. You're a diocesan priest. This sounds like the biography of a Jesuit or something, with I've got 18 degrees. So what was that like when your bishop kept on sending you back for more and more and more?
Well, it's actually pretty common. I mean, so when a guy starts out in priestly formation, studies are a big deal. Mm-hmm. And so, because ideally, if he becomes a priest, teaching will be a regular part of what he does, whether that's in the confessional, whether it's from the pulpit or RCIA class or something. So that sort of that ministry aspect is an important part of it, but also for his own personal faith understanding of God, of human nature, of the church. And so it's not, the academic portion is not the totality of seminary formation, but it is an important piece. And so anyway, there's a lot of books, a lot of lectures, a lot of papers involved with it.
So when he's done, the average priest has, is there an hour component, or they have to tick off, 82 hours in theology and 194 in
Well, the church actually thinks in terms of years. And so in terms of theology, American seminarians are required to study theology for 4 years. Okay. Minimum.
So we were reading in the introduction first, before you discerned the priesthood, you went to Oklahoma State. Yep. What were you going to study when you were at OSU?
I actually, grew up in Stillwater, Catholic my whole life. Yeah. I'm born and raised. There's no Catholic school in Stillwater. My parents didn't homeschool, so public school was pretty much the option for most kids growing up there. And so went to public school and quite frankly loved it. I was very involved with baseball, played that through high school, loved to fish. A lot of my family was in the area, a lot of friends in the area, of course, and so that was my upbringing, and just totally loved it. And it was probably around the age of, I was pretty young when I first started thinking about it. I was about 15 years old, and a very wise old man named Father Bob Schlitt.
Father Bob Schlitt, who baptized me.
Is that right?
Yes.
Any connection with Father Bob, Mike?
No, actually, I knew who he was. We were friends, but I was one of the few seminarians of my day who didn't get taken out to dinner by him.
Yeah. He was a total gem in the diocese. Yeah. And he took me out to dinner, right? And he asked, and he said, after some small talk, have you ever thought about being a priest? Yeah. And I was like, no. Next question, please. And he was like, I think you should think about it.
How old were you?
I was probably 15.
15.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to figure out exactly how many priests he convinced. He nudged pretty hard. Too. Yeah. A lot of men.
And a lot who didn't become priests as well. I think he was just very generous with that question. And then if a guy was open to it, he stayed there. He accompanied the man and gave him support and encouragement. And for me personally, even though the answer initially was no, like most guys are, he continued to. I would come to him for a confession, or I'd have when you're 16, 17 years old, you have a ton of questions about the faith, Bible, God, all that stuff, and he just like a good shortstop fielded it, and was very loving throughout the whole thing. And so I just found him personally very interesting and very inspiring, and that's kind of like how it all began. Was a priest.
So fast forward, now you find yourself as the vocation director for the diocese. Do you still take pages from the Father Bob Schlitt book?
Totally. Yeah. Because it's just not self-evident what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like when you are high school age, college age, young adult, and you're thinking about the priesthood. I also work with like young ladies who are thinking about the religious life. All they know is they love God. They're very involved with their Catholic faith. They love being at church. They love adoration. They typically read a lot, either online or books about the faith. They're very interested in things apologetics. And now there's like this tug, this like, not even an attraction, I would say. I would say more like a curiosity of like, is God? What would it be like to be a priest? What would that be like? What would it be like to be a religious sister? And then from there, it's not like obvious what you're supposed to do. And so, like, am I discerning? Am I not discerning? They have no idea. Sometimes they will talk to the local priest. And so the church, basically every religious order and every diocese has one set apart that our sole job is to accompany these young people who are asking these questions. And so I'm not in parish ministry anymore. I'm not in, I was a chaplain of Bishop Kelly, for a while, and none of that anymore. And so now my full-time job is like high school age, college age, young adult, young men who are thinking about the priesthood, young ladies who are asking questions about the religious life. I accompany them.
Right.
And so,
well, people like Sharon and me, we're past the childbearing years, and like all of our kids are all grown up. But what can we do as parishioners in the pew to help you? How do we help scout out the next great priest or the next great sister?
Yeah. For some reason, Catholics can be really sheepish, priest included, really sheepish about that question of like, not necessarily like, hey, you're going to be a nun one day. It's like, no, you don't know that. And so, but you can say, listen, I just see you around in adoration a lot, and I don't know if you're open to the religious life or not, but I think you should at least pray about it. Like that right there, right? That right there. Typically, there's like the first time they hear about it or hear something like that, usually it's a not only a no, a heck no, right? But then when people say that 3 or 4 times, or they hear it from different parties that, hey, yeah, I think you'd be a good priest, and I think you should at least think about it. At some point, they're going to go home at night and go, what am I missing? Like, I have never thought about this before, but people who are prayerful and who are at church and who love the church and who know me are seeing something in me. Maybe I should at least open up and ask some questions, right? It doesn't mean they're going to be a priest. But that kind of help when you see signs in somebody in your parish that like that are just kind of priestly, right? You see them praying, you see them volunteering around the parish, you see them, they're like the lead altar server, or she's leading a Bible study, or she's on her own time just going to a nursing home just to comfort those who are pretty lonely, right? I mean, when you see those like priestly or religious things just manifesting almost on their own, those are good people to pop the question to.
Were you doing those? So you're in Stillwater. Were you involved in campus ministry? Were you doing those things that you look for now in someone who might?
Early on, no. Early on, I was in Sunday school with everybody else in my class, right? And so I don't know why Father Bob he there were about 3 or 4 of us that he said, why don't we go out to dinner? And I don't. So there wasn't anything like recognizable at the time that would suggest.
Now, did they have like once you got to OSU?
Besides my hands glowing.
Yeah, exactly. Once you got to OSU, did they have like focus missionaries? Like,
not at the time. So that this was I graduated high school in 2003.
Okay.
So early on, in like 15, 16 years old, there was nothing really. But as time went on, I got more and more involved with my Catholic faith and started to, almost obsess about it, right? I just could not read enough, could not listen to Scott Hahn tapes, or CDs and all those things. And then eventually, at OSU, I was in a fraternity, worked at Mexico Joe's and Eskimo Joe's. I mean, it was kind of a college student, dated and stuff. But then, they're just the Catholic thing, the God thing was real, and it would not leave me alone. So I was pretty involved with the student center there, mission trips and pilgrimages and retreats and daily mass and adoration and things like that. And so as time went on, those whatever you want to call those, manifestations or something started to really, I think, show.
Yeah.
Okay, so you go to seminary, then you go to Rome as a seminarian, and now most recently you have your new kind of assignment.
Yeah.
So tell us about that. You're going to be returning to Rome.
Yeah.
As the Vice Rector of North American College. So if you can explain to our listeners, what is the North American College?
Yeah.
What does a Vice Rector do? And tell us, like, when you go and what you'll be doing.
Yeah. Okay, good question. So the North American College is America's, like, seminary in Rome. And so it's been there over 160 years, about the time of, like, the Civil War, actually, when things were looking kind of dire for America, and it wasn't sure what direction things will go, and will the country even stand. They put a seminary in Rome to keep it both American but also Roman Catholic, lest something like a Church of England happen or something like that. And so they wanted to keep it Roman, but at the same time keep it American. So it's an American seminary right in Rome. So for 160 years, it's been training priests that they are from the U.S., from all over. They go over there for their 4 or 5 years of priest school, so to speak, and then they come back. Mm-hmm. Then they come back to the States. And so they go back to their diocese as priests.
Do Canadians attend?
There are a few Canadians,
okay.
It's the North American College, and actually a few Australians, I think, still go there, because it's just culturally it's similar
enough.
Yep. Huh. And so anyway, so that's the seminary in Rome, where they go and prepare and train and be formed, and then ideally they come back as awesome priests.
Right.
And
so when you're at the North American College, it's not a university, so you would be going to, where did you attend? So you attended the University of St. Thomas Aquinas.
Yeah.
And there's also, like, Father Jack attended the Gregorian.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's
no rivalry.
No rivalry there. But there's, like, a lot of different places that you could attend. So the people that come and live at the North American College, that's kind of, is that the dorm, sort of? Or
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And so they use the word college, but it's college in kind of a European sense. It's a little bit different than what we think of as a college. And so it is the seminary building, which includes dorm rooms. It includes the refectory, which is where they eat, several chapels, several practice chapels when they're, like, kind of learning where to put their hands for Mass and things like that. All that sports field there.
Sort of formation happens?
Yes, yeah. So spiritual direction, confessions, daily Mass, prayer, talks, conferences about the priesthood, formation conferences, all that happens at the seminary itself. However, the academics, so the study of theology, when they have a course on the Eucharist, for example, or a course on ancient church history or Greek or something like that, those happen at the universities, which there are several throughout the city of Rome that they attend.
So if you get, as a young seminarian, your bishop told you you're going to be going to Rome, to the North American College, and then do you get to pick which university you study at, or does he, or does the school?
Yeah, so work? It's up to the diocese.
Okay.
So usually we'll get the. There's a little bit of, like, the bishop studied the Gregorian. All his guys are going to Gregorian, right? Yeah. There's a little bit of that can happen. Most dioceses would get the input from the seminarian, which, because they're different. The Gregorian University is run by Jesuits and has that whole history and has been for 500 years, right?
And the classes are in Italian.
Those are all in Italian.
Okay.
Yep. The University of St. Thomas Aquinas, sometimes also called the Angelicum, is very Dominican, right? It's a different history. It's a different way of teaching. And those classes are actually in English.
Okay.
So there's that.
And is there another seminary also? I mean,
like university?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's several universities throughout the city that offer theology. Those are the two primary ones that historically we call them NACers. NACers have gone to North American College, NAC. And so those are the two primary ones that they go. So when I was a student there, our diocese left it to me to decide. And because the Angelicum was Dominican, they studied primarily St. Thomas Aquinas. And so I love Aquinas. So that was, if it would have been, the language is actually totally secondary. It didn't really matter what the language was. To take these theological courses and study Thomas Aquinas for 3 years. Yeah.
So even though you were studying in English, you still learned the Italian language.
Yeah. So the seminarians go over a couple months early and do some Italian immersion. And then it's kind of up to them how much they, especially if you go to the Angelicum where your lectures are in English. And then when they return to the North American College, that's an American environment. And so there's very little Italian spoken there, except maybe ciao or, pass the vino or something. Yeah, right.
So now, you're returning for this vice rector position. Will you live there? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a, apartment or
Yes.
do you have a dorm room?
Yeah, and so those listeners who are familiar with Bishop Muggenberg, who's from the Diocese of Tulsa, he was the vice rector at the North American College.
Yes, and we can put a link to his interview.
Right.
In our show notes. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So anyway, I was on the same I was on the fourth floor, and he was the priest of the fourth floor, and so we were on the same hallway for 4 years there. Anyway, I'm moving into an apartment basically, right in the seminary.
And what will you be doing? What does a rector do?
So the rector, again, kind of church terms can be sometimes not very clear, kind of chasuble. What's a chasuble?
Right.
It's boring. I don't know what that is. And so, is that a dress? No, it's a cassock. Right? So anyway, rector would be the president.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So the rector of the seminary is the head honcho. The buck stops there.
What would he take care of? Yes.
The entity, the whole thing. The whole thing is under his watch, and so he needs to make sure that there are faculty on board, that the diocese are happy with the seminarians' formation there, that there's good relations with the city of Rome and the Vatican, that things are being maintained maintenance-wise. And the whole operation falls under. He's the head guy.
Okay.
And so the vice rector would be the vice president. Okay. So, So historically, the North American College. This may be boring detail for your listeners, but anyway, they've had two vice rectors.
Yeah.
And one of them would take care primarily of the maintenance side of things, the economo, which is the business side of the seminary. So landscaping and the kitchen staff and the bills and the.
Well, and some of those buildings are pretty old. So that takes a lot of care to maintain all that, sure. Yeah,
there's a lot of that. So anyway, so Monsignor Powers, who's the current rector, he's new this year, he wants not two but one vice rector. He wants just kind of one. He wants one number two.
Yeah.
So.
Not you.
And that's side you the short
yeah.
So you will be taking care of those things. Will it change too? Will you be?
Yeah, so they're moving things around. So those sort of business administrative aspects are going to a non-priest.
Yeah.
So probably an Italian lay person will be actually has been taking on more and more of those things, and will continue to.
That makes sense.
And then the priests will be able to do more what we do as priests.
Right.
So, and that's help form the seminarians. That's the main goal of the North American College. Is these are guys who are from America who have histories, and they need healing. They need formation. They need to be They need truth, and they need to grow spiritually and in their pastoral abilities as well. And that's mainly what the seminary is there to do. So by the time they're ordained, they can go back and they are equipped. They're prepared to sit across from someone in the confessional and be as Christ to them. Or stand at the pulpit on Sunday and be able to speak in a way to open up what may be in a pretty obscure biblical passage that people hear that and what? The priest ideally would be able to open that up for them.
Right.
And show that not only is it interesting, but it's also really good for your life. Your life is better when these things are a part of it.
Well, it's a good transition as you're describing what you're going to be doing, which is this really important formation piece.
Yeah.
As we transition to the second part of our podcast, which is how you pray. So, how do you pray? How will you be praying maybe with these seminarians? We often say, so you are a priest, so we know you pray the Liturgy of the Hours and you say Mass, but what kind of prayer draws your heart? You were formed by the Dominicans. When you are in a quiet moment or, what is going to sustain you so that you can help sustain these seminarians?
Yeah. I would say the same kind of prayer that I've been doing since being a seminarian and what I learned there, and that's yes, there's as you mentioned, there's very different. There's forms of prayer. There's the Liturgy of the Hours, which is mostly the Psalms that we pray 5 times a day. There's daily Mass that we say every day, pretty much every day. There's the Rosary, and there's devotions and things like that. So that all that's in there in a day. But kind of the main like mental prayer time would be what Lectio Divina is kind of the form that I really enjoy, and that is sitting down or standing or kneeling and opening up your Bible and taking some passage, usually from the life of Jesus, either teachings or just a story from his life, and reading it and rereading it and rereading it and kind of getting it into your mind. And then once the gist of it is there, close your eyes and enter in mentally, and have a look around, Yeah. And I just love that form of prayer. It's intimate, it's personal, there's details there. So if you're meditating on the crucifixion scene, then you would add in, you would see blood dripping down his legs, and you would see dirt in his face, and you would hear the cries of those who are watching, and kind of stepping into what it would have been like, right? Using our God-given imagination to use that for meditation purposes. I just love that form of prayer and do it pretty much every day of my life.
Do you remember the first time you did it?
Not really.
Yeah.
Actually, I remember, now that I think about it, kind of, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it was first week of seminary in Minnesota, and Father Bear, God rest his soul, the rector, he gave a conference on this. And we took a single scripture passage from the New Testament, and he said, now go walk around and you just chew on that.
Yeah.
Like, distractions will come, you block them out, right? You just chew on that for a while. And I remember walking around going, oh my gosh, this is like really good. Like this is, anyway. And so.
Well, that's awesome.
Well, and we can put a link in the show notes also to the School of Lectio. I don't know if you've had a chance to go there, but they teach that practice, at the monastery here in Tulsa.
Sharon's a teacher there.
I happen to be a teacher there, but I too draws my heart, and I like somebody, this is just Jack Cruz, who's a parishioner here, you came and must have given a talk about Lectio at some point, because he has quoted you as sort of transforming his prayer, the way he prays with Scripture. So
for the year of prayer, it was how to pray.
And then I was kind of the St. Mary's RCIA prayer guy for several years, and so we come in and teach that RCIA class on prayer, which I would walk through. That's where we'd walk through Lectio, to kind of step by step how it's done, why we do it, what to do where you're in there, applying it to your daily life. How can you take this scene and make it something practical and lived. That was anyway. And
would that be something that you would that be a part of what you're going to be doing in Rome? Would you teach that practice or pray?
Yeah. And so, I mean, the seminarians, they have, I would think it was kind of like two wings, so to speak. There's their own personal growth, but then there's also their ministry abilities, right? And so that personal growth, definitely Lectio Divina, how to make a good confession, how to grow a virtue, just sort of general mentoring that happens of helping them become not only good Christians, but like good priests. And so that's a whole aspect of seminary formation that is their personal benefit, which is separate but very connected to that second piece of, so that when they're a priest, they're able to help the people of God do the same, right? Whether that's through teaching or hearing confessions or weddings or funerals or accompanying someone who's on their deathbed. So those kind of personal faith, enriching things, fasting, prayer, confession, sacraments, Mass, all those things that kind of spiritual reading, even the study of theology, those things that kind of fan the flame, we want them to be really good at those things, so that as priests, boom, they can give it. And so,
how long is your commitment there, or do you know? Do they just send you
3 to 5 years?
Okay, 3 to 5.
So 3 years if they want to get rid of you.
Yep,
5
that
years
gives them an out.
Oh wow,
3 to 5 years, and then
if I stink it up, 3.
Yes. So one of the things we ask everyone is if there's been a time in your life when it's been difficult to pray. So a time when you felt distance from God, or where you just have found it difficult to turn to God, to carve out time, or, So.
Yeah. I would say about 4 times a day. I find it difficult to pray. Usually it's easy, but sometimes it's not. But different than some people, like moments of like real suffering it's hard for them to pray in that moment. It's actually not for me personally, for whatever reason. I think the Lord like knows how weak I am and like goes easy on me. And so those moments of family members who are sick or I don't know, just think, difficult, tragic times, those are actually not that difficult for me to pray. It's very easy to see why I should be doing this, and boy, do I need help now, etc. The times that are challenging for me are like is like busyness. When you overcommit or you just got things are just coming your way, and you wake up in the morning, you don't sleep well at night because your brain is trying to hold these things. And you wake up in the morning, and I should be doing my lectio right now. But there are 4 other things that are like, coming at you saying, tend to me. And sometimes those win out, right? And so it's actually not a tragic time that's difficult for me to pray. Really happy time, not difficult for me to pray. I would say like when things are busy or just piling up, or kind of stressed because of there are things dangling out there that need to be tended to. That's when I find it difficult to like. I sit down with my liturgy of the hours and I just want to like go. Bup, 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 bup. Yeah. Okay. Now, what can I? Right. When that's the time hard? That's the time to settle in.
You spent a lot of time in parishes and as chaplain at BK, etc. Is it hard to balance that public prayer? Saying mass, hearing confessions, etc., with your personal. I mean, does that personal time? It's always being pulled upon. Everybody wants a piece of you.
Yeah. The personal prayer time.
Yeah.
Or just the personal.
People keep on asking you for your time. Like to appear on podcasts, etc. Yeah. And so that you can only divide the pie so many times.
Right. Yeah. No, it's an excellent question, and it's actually a good conversation for seminarians to hear. Is because just by the nature of our line of work, no requests, no one's like asking us to like go rob a bank. Yeah. Like all the requests that come in for priests are for some good, right? It's something that you can easily go, that would be, I can see how that would be helpful. I can see how that, but there are only so many hours of the day. And as flesh and blood human beings, we need rest. We need to fill the tank. We need that personal prayer time. I need time with my priest friends where we're just eating Doritos and watching Family Guy or something.
Right.
That like recreation time is necessary, or you're just gonna run out. Yeah. And so that I think that comes with time and experience, age. That when you're a young priest, just a small example, like the first Advent, my first year back in the diocese. There's a million requests to come speak here, come hear this, Advent penance rite and this and that. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Things were coming in September for December. I just said yes to everything. About 3 weeks into December, I was like, I'm about to die. Yeah. I am not going to survive December.
That's my caricature of an associate pastor. His first year in the priest, you say yes to everything. And then you spend the next 49 years trying to say no, I can't do that.
I say no.
Really. Yeah.
I say no a lot. I don't know why I'm saying this publicly right now, but requests come in a lot for all kinds of things.
Right.
And I say no like a lot.
Well, you've got to have that focus. You've got to have a lane.
Yeah.
Yes. I know we are wrapping it up, but there's one thing that we wanted to ask you about real quick is this video series that is being used by lots of dioceses. Mike was telling me about it. You did some vocation videos. Tell us about that real quick. I know we're out of order, and I'm, kind of.
But I'm awfully excited about this project.
Yes. So tell us about this project.
Do we have to stick to it? Do we have to go a couple minutes over? Is that okay?
We're in overtime. Bonus time.
Okay. Yes, we're okay. We do this sometimes. Yes.
So we developed a 6-week discernment group, so that young men who are open to the priesthood, who are thinking about it, who just want to learn more about what it's like, that they can jump in, and it's not 28 meetings, right? It's not a year long. It's 6 weeks, once a week for 6 weeks, in a small group setting where they can meet other guys their age. They learn about what it's like to hear confessions, for example, and then it's mostly discussion, right? They discuss what would you like about hearing confessions? What would you find difficult about it? If you saw the person after you heard their confession, do you think you would see them differently? Or do you think how would it impact your preaching if you're a priest? Like you're hearing confessions of your people, you think that would impact your preaching? And the answer is yes, of course it does. But we want them to be considering this. And so we came up with this, dare I say, really cool discernment group model, really 6 weeks. Yeah. And there became over time demand, so women's groups as well for religious life. And there became, people just heard about it and wanted to know what was going on, and even from other dioceses. So we put the team together to film videos, and I reached out to Mike Malcolm and was like, how do you film a video? Like, what is this? So what do you, anyway, and he was so generous.
But you're such a good student. You just took off like a jet plane.
Yeah. And so, anyway, he taught me how to film a video and angles and sound, and you came and set up, and it was very generous. So anyway, we filmed these, short videos for these discernment groups. We formulated the questions, the whole how they're all set up, and we basically packaged it and just decided if any diocese wants it, we're just going to hand it to them. Free of charge. Wow. Totally free of charge. And right now, I just got a text yesterday, but anyway, there's about 30 other dioceses in the U.S. that are using our videos and our format for this 6-week discernment group.
That's great.
For Priesthood 101 and Religious Life 101.
It's 6 weeks. Anybody can do 6 weeks. That's like a brilliant aspect of it. Yeah. 6 weeks. I can commit to 6 weeks to discern.
Especially young people are terrified to commit to anything.
That's
so
what
6
I mean.
weeks, come on, that's next
month.
That's
doable.
Yeah, it's not a whole year.
Basically, so these were, we started these groups and then refined them over time. So basically, every piece has been thought out and has intentionality behind it. Mm-hmm. So that at this point, there's nothing annoying left in them, hopefully. It's all like, oh, yeah, that sounds good. Anyway.
Well, I'm sorry for interrupting, but I wanted to make sure because I thought that was
important.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Yes,
So we'll have to do part 2 of this podcast. We'll have to pack our families up and all fly to Rome, and we'll interview you on the Spanish steps or something.
Zoom you in because we've done that.
Sure. It's easy. Today, that's piece of cake. And
that's a piece of cake. I know. Well, we did Archbishop Peter Wells from Africa, so we could do you from Rome.
Same time zone.
Maybe we'll have to
just about.
Yes.
Is that right? 12 hours or
pretty
so?
Close.
Wow.
Yeah, something like that.
The final question, the thing that we asked, the second question that we ask everyone is, if you could ask everyone in the world to pray for one thing, one prayer intention for all of our listeners to join you in praying for, what would that be?
Yeah. Yeah, excellent. Great question. Again, you could say a lot of different things, a lot of things to pray for. But I would say, just in my line of work, vocations, that's a big deal for the church. And so the state of priests in the diocese has a big impact on the life of the parish, which has a big impact on people in that area, believing or not believing, or attending or not attending. And so religious life as well. So I would say, please pray for an increase in vocations to the priesthood and religious life. Those two vocations really marriage obviously brings a lot to the table, but the priesthood and the religious life, they bring something unique to the table that enriches the church as a whole. And if there are good holy priests out there, good holy sisters, the church benefits, and so big time. So I would say an increase in vocations to the priesthood and religious life.
Well, I can pray to that. Would you lead us in a glory be, Father?
Yeah. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Thank you, Father Pratt.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Glory Be is a production of the Office of Communications at the Church of St. Mary in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm your producer, Mike Malcolm. See you next time.